Hi folks, and welcome back to Fishing with Den. Well, as you can see from all the reels in front of me today, we're going to be discussing fixed spool reels. And in fact, it's not so much a discussion as an explanation, all about which one you should use and under what circumstances. I will be going into a little bit of depth, but basically fixed spool reels is where we're going. Oh, they're also called spinning reels in other parts of the world, by the way. And pretty much we're looking at the sort of standard sort of fishing I do, which is, let's say, you'd be looking at a commercial, smallish commercial. You could be looking at a big reservoir, you could be looking at a small stream, or even a large powerful river. And so for that, I'm actually looking at sort of a 3,000 size reel up to about a 6,000 size reel. And really, they do go up in thousands. So you've got 3,000, 4,000, 5,000 and 6,000. Now, don't get too confused because there's no standardized size, but they're all sort of more or less within a sort of a bracket. So where you might get confused is that, for example, as I said, 3, 4, 5,000 size reels, yeah, easy, but this one's a 5,500 size, and the one on the end here is a 6,500 size. Just to make it even more confusing, this one is a 520, not even a thousands, but a 520. But basically, if you look at it, it's pretty much a 4,000 size reel, but maybe a small 5,000. But yes, it can be a little bit confusing. It's just the way it is sometimes. You might also get, I think Dye would do a 4012 version, but just go with the sort of the thousands. And this actually is the Nitro NTR Mark II, so this is a 4002. So yeah, confused? You should be. But for general purpose use, think 3,000, 4,000, 5,000 and 6,000 size reels. You probably won't even get to a 6,000 size reel. The biggest you'll probably use is the 5,000 if you're new to this fishing game. Okay, so before we actually talk about the specifications, you need to ask yourself, well, how much do I want to spend on a reel? And if you've got loads of money, well, great, go out and buy the most expensive reel and job done. If, like the rest of us, you live in the real world and you go to work or you're on a pension like me, then you could consider going down to the lower end of the range. Excuse me. This reel, I think when I bought it, cost me about 25 or 30 pounds. And in fact, I wouldn't normally spend more than 100-ish pounds on a reel, depending what it was. I think these were about 110 when I bought them a few years ago. This is the most expensive reel I have. I think these are about 150 pounds. But you can get some really good reels. These ones are, I think they're still $69.99. These are the MAP reels. All perfectly good reels. All of these reels I've used and abused and they've been absolutely fine. So, next question is, how long are you going to keep it? Well, if you're going to keep it for 20 years, go and buy an expensive one because it probably will last longer. But in general terms, I keep my reels for about 3 years and then some new bright shiny object comes out and I go and buy that as well. It's entirely up to you in the end, which way you want to play this. But even down at the cheaper end, with these reels here, I've only had this one for a short time, it's been perfectly fine, but I can't give you a long-term review on that one. This one, this is the MAP Carp Tech FD 4000, or 4000 FD, sorry. It's the one I use quite a lot, in fact, probably over the last 6 years of this channel's life. I've probably used that more than I've used any other. And back when I bought them, I think they were about £50, something like that. But the next thing you have to do is to say to yourself, okay, so what do I want to use it for? Because you couldn't just use something like this little reel for heavy duty carp fishing on a river. It just hasn't got the power. And when we're talking about that, let's talk about power. Gear ratios. Quite often on the sales stuff, you'll see them say sort of 5.2 to 1. And all that is the amount of times this bail arm goes around per turn of the reel handle, like that. Okay, so anything from say 5 to 1, 5.1 to 1, 5.2 to 1, maybe 5.3 to 1. If it says something like that, it's a good general purpose reel you can use for most fairly light to medium fishing. If, however, like this one, it has something like a 4.6 or 4.7 to 1 gear ratio, that's then designed for cranking power. And cranking power just means the amount of power you can put through the handle to actually turn this bail arm and bring a big fish in, or indeed a big feeder. So when you're down below 5 to 1, down, as I say, 4.6 to 1, you're looking generally at bigger, more heavy duty reels, which are designed to cope with big fish and big tackle. And really, for the most part, that sort of covers it. 4,000 and 5,000 will cover most things. The 3,000 size reel, and again, this applies if you're looking at a budget. If you can only afford to buy 1 or 2 reels, you don't want to have 2 of these, 2 of these, 2 of these. I mean, I've got loads, but that's because I've sort of somehow arrived over the years. I would suggest that you can use this if you're only going fishing for little roach and skimmers and stuff like that. Yeah, a 3,000 size reel is fine. Fits on a rod, very light, and it works great. But for most of my stuff, I tend to use the 4,000 size reels because they sort of cover the central range. They're good for, you can use them certainly for float fishing. You can also use them for feeder fishing. And quite often they'll be sort of, I think this one is 5.2 to 1, for example. So I'd use that for sort of light to low medium sort of size feeders for fishing out to about 40 meters, maybe 50. Yeah, probably more like 40 though. And so the 4,000 size reel for me is the most versatile reel. And if you're going to buy a fixed spool reel, my suggestion would be to buy a 4,000 size reel because you can make it work on the lighter side, or you can, at a pinch, make it work on the heavier side as well. 5,000s and above, as I say, you're using those for big, heavy sort of tackle. And you probably, in reality, won't get much chance to use those. If you're just a general pleasure angler, maybe a match angler in the UK, obviously if you're top flight, you're going to have all of these things and you're probably going to have really expensive ones. But we're not talking about that sort of realm here. We're talking about the average bloke that goes out fishing, wants to enjoy himself, but have decent tackle that'll do the job. Now I have actually given myself some notes down here to keep myself in line. And the other thing that comes up here is the amount of ball bearings in the system. Now quite often you'll see 4+1, 5+1, 8+1, and all it means is the amount of ball bearings that are inside the reel here, plus this one. The +1 is the one in the bail arm here, this little rotary thing here. And basically, the more ball bearings you have in it, the more likely it is to be smoother and also to last longer, because there's no real metal-to-metal contact. You've got the ball bearings inside to do that job. Having said that, I think this Nitro reel's got sort of 4+1 or maybe 3+1 ball bearings. Perfectly smooth reel. It may not last as long as one with 8 or 10 bearings for all I know, but I'm not going to have it that long because, as I say, I only keep them for about 3 years. So, as I say, then bearings, the more bearings, smoother and probably going to last longer, but also be probably a lot more expensive. Handles, yeah, talking about handles, some reels come with 2 handles, like you see here. Most reels, though, tend to come with 1. If it does come with 2 handles, great. In fact, these matrix reels came with a single handle and a double handle. And in fact, I've got the double handle one over here. One I made earlier. Okay. So, as you can see, 2 handles. And really, this is personal preference, I suppose. Some people like to do that and they get no spin on the thing, so no vibration or wobble. If you use a single handle, You get a little bit of vibration or wobble on the thing, but how often are you going to do that anyway when you're fishing? Where these things do come in handy, as I say, if you want to put your hand down and have a knob of the handle, two-hand, use a two-handed reel, two-handled handle. But if you want to have more cranking power, use the single handle, because you can't tell here, but basically the length from here to here is longer on the single handle than it is on the double handle from there to there. So if you want more cranking power, go with the single handle on the reels. Line capacity, yeah, okay. This is that older reel, this is the MAP reel that I've been using all this time. And on the spool, it tells you normally, if I can read it, hang on. Wow, my eyesight's quite good. The ratio is 5:1. It takes 4 pounds line, 250 metres, 5 pound line, 200 metres, and so on. Well, that's all very well, but there's no standardisation in lines either, so take it all with a pinch of salt. Also, this comes with a deep spool on it, so you tend to have to put 200 or 300 metres of line on there, which is pointless. Obviously, we've covered all this in other videos where you can use backing line and so on, but most reels these days come with a sort of a fairly shallow spool, and they'll take sort of 150 metres of line. Some of them say 150 metres of 0.28 millimetre. And actually when they use the millimetres, that's actually easier so that you know what you're putting on. But you don't have to put that on it, 0.28 millimetre line, which in my case is Guru drag line at 8 pounds. You can put whatever you like on there, it just gives you an indication of how much line it's likely to take. Line clips, yeah, line clips, that's a good one. Let's talk line clips. Two different types of line clip. There's these ones here. This is the one where you just literally clip it underneath and it holds it in position. You see that? Other line clips, like the one, in fact, let's use this because it's a nice big one. This line clip on here, this one, is a big round line clip, and you have to go all the way around the clip really to make it work. These aren't too bad, you can put them underneath and they will stay to some extent. But round line clips, yeah, you tend to have to put the line all the way around it. And some reels do come with two line clips these days. In fact, won't be at all surprised. Yeah, this Nitro 6500 size one has a line clip there and a line clip on that side. Okay, straightforward sort of thing so far. Yes, you saw me taking off the spool of this one. This is a Shimano, and it just clips on, and you can then do what you need to do. Normal reels will have, say normal reels, they're normal reels as well, but probably the majority of reels these days have an unscrew mechanism on the front, like that. And so you can take them on and off that way. The thing with that is, yes, it's a little bit more faffy, but it does mean that the screw mechanism is also the drag or clutch, more about which later. In fact, let's actually cover the drag now. This is the drag knob, or drag, you can't really call it a lever. By the way, if I refer to it as a clutch, then that's because I'm old. And all that means is, as you slacken it off, the spool will rotate, and that's for fighting a fish. If I do it up, it makes it a lot more difficult to turn. And so when you're fighting a fish, it might well be that you're fighting away and a fish lunges and it has to take some line. Now, if you've got that set too tight, all you do is reach forward and just move it a little bit that way, or if it's too loose, you move it that way, and that tightens and loosens the drag. On these reels, this is the one with the front release spool. and this has a rear drag mechanism. So on this one, let's put the anti-reverse on, you're reeling in, fish tries to take line, and you don't have to reach around to the front, you just use this little knob on the back to slacken off, and then this moves. And if you want to go tighter, as before, just do that. And a lot of people think that for a beginner, the rear drag mechanism is probably easier to use. Personally, personal preference. But one thing you should know about is a thing called a Shimano fighting drag, which is this other lever on the back, this one here. This is the drag system, but with the fighting drag, instead of having to turn the knob, you can just pull that way, and that loosens it, or you can pull it across that way, and that tightens it. So, front drag, rear drag, personal preference as far as I'm concerned, but those are the differences. Anti-reverse, okay. Normally, okay, what is an anti-reverse? So basically all it means is I'm reeling in and I can reel backwards. If I put the anti-reverse on, I can not reel backwards anymore. And the little lever is usually underneath the reel. Having said that, on some reels, let's take this one for example, it's at the back there. So as you see, go backwards, whoops, click it up, can't go backwards. Straightforward stuff, but you do need to know where the anti-reverse is. And bear in mind that there are some reels out there now, especially if you're talking about spinning, which is sort of a lure fishing thing. Some reels are made without an anti-reverse, so just make sure, no, that's not true. Not just make sure you've got an anti-reverse. If you don't want an anti-reverse and you want to just use the drag, fine. But I must admit, when I'm fishing, I tend to be reeling in, using the drag on the front, and then if it really takes off quickly, I will actually backwind. But that's a whole nother conversation. But as I say, just be aware that some reels don't have an anti-reverse mechanism anymore, it just doesn't go backwards. What else have we got? Yes, bait runners. This is a bait runner. Probably more used by specimen anglers than the general pleasure angler. And all it means is you pull this lever back here, and now the spool can rotate freely. So if the fish takes line, pulls it off, and away it goes. As soon as you want to engage it, you can do that, and it's now solid. Or if you just reel in, it does the same job. As I say, yep, fine. Mostly used by specimen anglers. You might find that people who are a bit unsure about whether they're going to lose the rod on a commercial might use a bait runner. And in fact, they do make them in smaller sizes. I've got one over here thinking about it. This is just a small 4,000 sized bait runner, same sort of idea. There you go, whoops. Yeah. But look at the difference in the size. And so for the most part, you'd probably be using a 4,000, maybe a 5,000, but this is a 5,500, and you can see the difference in it. As I said right at the start, there is no standardization. So really, that's where you're going. And that pretty much covers most of what I wanted to talk about regarding fixed spool reels. Yes, there are some other things like long-nosed spools here, or you could talk about oscillation and gearing and all the rest of it, the actual way the gears are manufactured. But for you to be able to go into a tackle shop, hopefully what we've given you here is just the ability to go in and say, right, this is the kind of fishing I'm going to be doing. I think this is the kind of reel I want, and I've identified the ones I'd like at this price. And if the guy in the tackle shop thinks you're right, he'll sell you that reel. If he thinks you're wrong because you've made a mess of the whole thing, well, you may get a completely different set of options. But that's pretty much it for this video on explanation about the fixed spool reel. Hope you found it useful, guys. If you did, as always, please click the like button. If you want to subscribe, that's even better. Until the next time, bye for now.